Previously on Yu-Gi-Oh! History, we entered Arc V and took a look at its first format, Shadal format, or otherwise known as Duelist Alliance format. Which one do you prefer? While the new pendulum mechanic was still on its training wheels, the also new Shadal archetype took the dueling world by storm with consistent YCS wins, though the format would continue through October and the month's new ban list, which brought back notable card Raigeki. November would be a different story. For what's to come will certainly challenge the metagame. Speaking of, on November 7th, duelists in North America would be greeted to the next core set, the new Challengers. The set advertised new support for primarily Burning Abyss, Shadal, and Yang Xing. Even though Yazi, Evil of the Yang Xing, would be a great card for the archetype, it wouldn't be enough to propel the deck to anything more than it was already being viewed as, which was an alright deck with too slow a speed. Whereas the other two archetypes would get ample support, like with Shadal getting El Shadal Fusion, a quick play fusion spell. Whoa! Suddenly the deck can access specific fusions during your opponent's turn. More so now since it gained two new fusions in Grista and Shake Inaga. Shake, 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 Inaga. Burning Abyss would get the largest influx of troops, with Malabranch's Alec, Calcab, and Rubik. Also, Virgil, Rockstar of the Burning Abyss, and Firelake of the Burning Abyss. Rubik is a tuner that allows the deck to get into its new synchro, Virgil. This Musician King lets you discard a Burning Abyss card to shuffle an opponent's card, either they control or one in the grave, back into the deck. And then if Virgil is destroyed, you can draw a card. Firelake is like Icarus Attack, but on crack. It works considering the deck loves to spam the field and equally see their BAs in grave. While the Malabranches wouldn't be anything too notable by themselves, one can't deny the amount of support BA received in new Challengers. Now why don't you go back home and smoke some crack? While the set would also see popular new archetypes in Frightfur, Fluffle, and Edge Imp, all eyes were on the new Pendulum archetype, Cleafort. These Earth Machines are actually evil mechanical husks that focus on pendulum summoning as a means to an end. That end being tribute summoning to gain powerful effects in a similar vein to Monarchs. But you can also normal summon them without tributing, in which their level and attack decreases. Cleafort Scout gets the deck going by searching whatever pieces you need in order to gain advantage, like Cleafort Disc to special 2 Cleaves from deck, or Shell to gain a second attack. This is in addition with other searchers like Summoner's Art and Sacrifice. We'll get to their meta viability in a moment. New Challengers would be quite the stacked set, as it included a number of notable cards. While I won't go over every interesting inclusion, some worth mentioning include Stellar Knight Trivor, Herald of the Arclight, Denko Sekka, and Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon. Trivor would be great in the Stellar Knight deck, which sadly failed to make any ripples aside from 9th place at YCS Anaheim by Charles Ramsey. Herald would be seen in formats down the road, while Denko Sekka would work great as an anti-meta tool, and Dark Rebellion being a solid way to beat over certain monsters. Overall, the new Challengers would be the boost the Arc V era needed after a relatively lukewarm start in Duelist Alliance. While that would be the only core set, the format did get another notable new release. Despite not being important to the meta, November 21st would include a new box set, Noble Knights of the Round Table. While there would be a few new releases around the pre-existing Noble Knight archetype, the real allure for this box is the new rarity, Platinum Rare. This obscure rarity is a TCG exclusive that gives every card in the set a platinum colored foil like gold rares. The difference being is that this foil covers the entirety of the card, giving them a striking dark presence. You want a dark hole? Well, here you go. Drink it all in. This leads us to the YCSs of the late 2014 period. Considering the short format that went to the end of the year, there were only 3 YCS events. Anaheim on November 22nd, Milan on December 6th, and Sydney on December 13th. All 3 tournaments would tell the story of Burning Abyss format, which would be the 3-way power struggle. The decks mentioned earlier, Burning Abyss, Shadal, and Cleafort, would be vying for the throne. After all, BA just got a ton of support. Shadal received less support, but had a previously competent strategy, and Cleaves was the hot new deck with something to prove. At YCS Anaheim, we saw an overwhelming amount of BAs and Klees in top spots. Shaddoll, while not being as present, still pushed its way through this new environment. 5th place by Chansey Wigglestove, that can't be real, played Chaos Shaddoll that added the new El Shaddoll Fusion and Shekanaga. The addition of Mathematician gave the deck a good Earth monster to fuse into Shekanaga, a fusion monster that could negate special summons and discard a Shaddoll card from hand to grave, as well as the same back row recur as the other fusions have. It also incorporated the new Denko Sekka to slow the game down to fit Shaddoll's speed. Justin Rodriguez would also achieve 5th with Klee's first top, right out of the pack. The deck made use of the new Perform of Howl Trample Links to balance and reuse Scout's effect. It was also built around a heavy stun strategy with the likes of Vanity's Emptiness and Skill Drain in the main deck. In addition to cards like Upstart Goblin and Pot of Duality, the deck could get into its key pieces swiftly. If you don't stop it right away, the deck can swarm the field, turn off effects, and OTK rather easily. Yeah, a stun OTK deck sounds counterintuitive, yet undoubtedly scary. That said, first would go on to Patrick Hoban with the surprise of no one, considering his track record. His BA build made use of all the new tools. The deck now has enough fuel to drive with, and Virgil gives the deck even more options to further its extra deck spam strategy. We can also see the 3 MSTs and Vaniness that would hurt the Cleefort strategy, but it was a double-edged sword. When YCS Milan would roll around, Evil Swarm attempted to push through, only making a single top 5 spot, which is respectable. It would be Klees that would nab the gold, however, doubling down on the stun cards and back row destruction to ensure OTKs. The 3 Night Beams was a surefire way to prevent your opponent from chaining possible back row cards like El Shaddoll Fusion or opposing Vanities. Plus, the sided Shadow Imprisoning Mirrors wrecked BAs and hurt Shaddolls. At the final event at YCS Sydney, it would be Shaddoll's turn to reach first place by incorporating the Artifact engine. With all the back row hate now running around, it made sense to run monsters open to the maneuver. Plus, they would gain you an advantage which would swing tempo when paired against Klees or BAs. The adoption of a second Denko Sekka didn't hurt either. At the time, considering Raigeki was recently unbanned, some people thought Konami may bring back Heavy Storm as well. Could you imagine the change in meta if that would occur? But at the end of the day, or the year for that matter, duels quickly became a game of checks and balances. Regarding balancing, Burning Abyss's edge was that it could spam the field with fodder to mass summon powerful rank 3s. It was consistent, fast, and abundant. On the flip side, it had a rough game post side deck. This makes VA a powerful, yet balanced deck. Shaddoll's edge was that it could abuse chain links that revolve around big boss monsters. A deck that could create strong board presence in a meta sense, while also acting as anti-meta, made for a fast utility deck. While it's not as consistent as BA, sharing similar weaknesses, and not as dominant as its former self, it's still a deck to fear if the opponent is unprepared. Lastly, Cleefort's edge was that unless you banish the monsters, they could come back each turn. The deck's OTK potential was consistent enough and equally fast if you didn't brick, because if it bricked like the Commodores. At least duelists were prepared to combat against this meta-defining pendulum deck with back row hate like MST, Dust Tornado, and Fairy Wind. Take away their pendulums and all they can do is basic bitch beatdown. So all 3 have their strengths and weaknesses, which makes for a relatively stable environment. Generally, the view was that BA claimed the top spot in the meta, then Klee below that, and Shaddoll right below Klee. It certainly made for a more fully realized format than Shaddoll did, from not only a variety standpoint, but from a pendulum standpoint too. It's easy to speculate on a ban list that could swing the favor in one direction or another, just as new generic pendulum support could benefit Klees, or should Konami release support for any of the contending archetypes. While the name The New Challengers would only reflect a minority of the meta, the phrase did ring true in regards to top decks. And if you're a fan of other rogue decks or casual thereof like Naturia, Heralds, or Fluffles, then this new core set gave you new toys to play with. It was a great way to push forth Arc V formats, as well as ending 2014 Yu-Gi-Oh! Remember, 1 year ago, we were stuck in Dragon Ruler hell. This shows just how much Konami can adjust Yu-Gi-Oh! Within a single year. A triangle format is scarcely a bad place to be. But will 2015 bring new light to the game? Or will things devolve quickly and fiercely.